First off, let me thank you for watching another video with me. My name is Lester Leavitt. Once again, I'm a PhD in public administration student at Florida Atlantic University. My dissertation project here is called the Occupied Squares Project of Second Life. And what I'm actually advocating here is the creation of a database along the lines of what Clifford Geertz, the social anthropologist, suggested back in the 1970s. He said that there needs to be a consultable record of what mankind has said. And so this new age of Web 2.0 user-generated content actually brings us to a place where we can create what Clifford Geertz could have never even dreamed possible back in 1973. What I'm advocating is that a database be created in narrative threads so that actually the query language will pull out narrative threads. If you think of a brick wall being made up of thousands of bricks, a governing narrative is actually made up of thousands of ideographs. An ideograph is a value-laden image or text that has far more meaning attached to it than just what it actually represents and what it signifies. So for example, the Arab Spring movement came from one cell phone picture of Mohammed Bouazizi after he had poured gasoline on himself and lit himself on fire. As horrible as that image was, it became an ideograph that was so value-laden that when it got distributed throughout the world, it actually toppled a government within 10 days of Mohammed Bouazizi dying from his self-sacrifice. What he did was he declared his dignity. He reclaimed his dignity as a human being because he had had that taken from him by a government who had gone and violated the trust that we as citizens place in our governments. And so by claiming back his dignity in that moment and by having that moment captured on a cell phone camera, we actually have what we had in 2011 by the end of the year with these 951 cities that I talked about in my previous videos. So how to archive those kinds of images? They're little simple images. Community conversations in a barbershop. If a researcher goes into a barbershop on an MLK Boulevard somewhere in America and records a conversation and has a little has a little tape recorder. I have my recorder here, which I take with me everywhere I go in case there's a conversation that happens and I can actually capture that because I'm a radio documentarian. I do radio documentaries and I love podcasting. So that travels with me everywhere I go. So that becomes an ideograph, a conversation in a barbershop about, well, let's say Trayvon Martin, which is at this point where I'm actually shooting this video is in March of 2012, and the Trayvon Martin affair is huge in the news right now. Trayvon Martin is another ideograph. And so a conversation about the Trayvon Martin situation in a barbershop on MLK Boulevard also becomes an ideograph. And so those types of records, which can be archived in this database now, are what we are actually looking for, so that 6 months from now, somebody who wants to drill down through here on policy making about racial issues in America will be able to drill down through this database and find a narrative thread about Trayvon Martin. And there will be, it depends on how you choose to do your querying, the query language would be entirely your choice as a user. Depends on how you do that. You may get a visual record of art, which people have done. You might get blogs. You might get a radio documentary or a podcast, which is what I do. You might get YouTube clips, which people have done about hoodies. So those type of records become now available through this database system. And you don't have to go out like I did when I was looking for what people were discussing in the Occupy General Assemblies throughout the United States. You don't have to go through hundreds and perhaps even thousands of individual records that you'd have to dig up on your own through a Google search. All of those records, if they were properly archived, would come up in a single narrative thread through this database. So that's what I'm going to be designing over the summer. If you have any skills in .NET frameworks, or if you have any skills in MySQL Server language programming, I could certainly use your help. But This database is actually, these outer perimeter records become the fuel for this vehicle that I was talking about. Remember I talked about this vehicle when I was using the poster? These records actually become the fuel. The database is the engine that will propel the vehicle, and the fuel actually runs the engine. So that's, I hope that's clarified how that project will come together, and I could certainly use your help.